When we really embrace vulnerability, we become more in touch with our deepest feelings and desires and insecurities. And that ultimately, in my opinion, is the cornerstone of empowerment. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Power in the Pause podcast. How are you guys doing today? So today's topic is something that is very near and dear to my heart. And the topic of today's podcast has to do with vulnerability. And more specifically, it is about unmasking vulnerability's role in life's pauses. So I want to really unravel the hidden forces behind what is possible in life's pauses when we enable ourselves to step into that very scary place, because what I know is on the other side is growth and resilience. And I'm sure many of you have found yourself in a pause or a transitional moment, whether that's a moment of reflection, transition, and or transformation. And what I know to be true, because I've been through it, and I've been through most recently, not one, not two, but three very powerful transitions, is that there are many powerful and concealed players in these pauses. And the biggest one that we're going to talk about today is vulnerability. And so I invite you to continue listening, because what I am going to talk about is how when vulnerability is stripped of what I like to call disguises, it really becomes the key to unlocking your most authentic self and enabling you to cultivate true resilience. So, as many of you may or may not know, I love definitions of words, and I want to make sure that we are all on the same page when I talk about the word vulnerability. And my absolute favorite expert on the topic is none other than Brené Brown. And I love her definition, and I think it is the best one out there. And so the way that she defines vulnerability is this. The definition of vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. But vulnerability is not weakness. It's our most accurate measure of courage. Oh, right? So powerful. I love her. So as you can hear, even from her definition, is that vulnerability and the power in the pause are very much connected. You see, life's pauses often coincide with moments of transition and challenge, which makes it the most ideal time for vulnerability to come and bubble to the surface. And when we embrace vulnerability during these moments, it involves really honestly acknowledging your emotions and fears, allowing for self-reflection, and gaining some insight into your true self, which then allows you to build resilience by confronting your biggest insecurities. It also fosters deep, authentic connections with other people, right? Intimacy, one of my favorite words. And it paves the way for personal growth and transformation, which ultimately infuses these moments of pauses with meaning and potential. And vulnerability during life's pauses really are an opportunity, or you can even think of it as a gateway to deeper self-awareness, personal growth, and resilience. And it's the acknowledgement of our most authentic and highest self and our willingness to connect with others authentically that really allows us to go there. And so through vulnerability, we're actually allowing ourselves to tap into our own power within these moments of pause, which leads to personal transformation and empowerment. So when we are allowing ourselves to be open and honest, both with ourselves and with others, about what it is that we're going through, it really enables us to be vulnerable in moments where it really unlocks the door to self-acceptance, acknowledgement, and really embracing our inner true self. And when we think about vulnerability as a means to confront your fears and uncertainties head on, you really open yourself up to stepping into that place rather than avoiding or sealing them. So many times our fear gets the best of us, and it just really, the reason it does is because we're terrified to expose ourselves, right? We're acknowledging that we're in a struggle. And a lot of times we want to appear strong. And I'm actually going to share with you guys a couple of the most common myths that I hear about why people tend to steer clear of vulnerability. And I get to debunk those for you guys today. So, one of the biggest ones I would say is really that vulnerability is frequently misunderstood, or it's perceived as a weakness. And this is really I believe it's because that society has a misconception around what vulnerability really means. And I think that we also see it as a weakness because it's like walking onto a stage and, thinking that, you have no clothes on, right? We're terrified of exposing our most authentic self. And so in the world that we live in, so many times that, we think about being vulnerable, we're just terrified that we're going to be mistaken as fragile. And I know I've been there. I wanted everyone to think that I was strong. I thought that doing it myself was strong, but ultimately that was the weakness. What the strength was in asking for help. And very similarly with vulnerability, so many times we associate it with being defenseless, or opens us up to, or really becoming more susceptible to hurt. But that particular misconception really overlooks what Brene defines vulnerability to be, which is it overlooks the immense courage that it takes to be vulnerable, because ultimately what you're doing is you're embracing your true emotions, and you're really facing and confronting your fears head on, which I think is far from a sign of weakness, right? That vulnerability is really a strength. It's a strength that enables us to create deeper connection. It enables us to dive so much deeper into our own personal growth. It builds resilience, and it really helps you to challenge those stories, those misperceptions that run rampant in your mind. So here is, I want to share a personal journey, actually, of one of my clients who faced a series of setbacks and challenges in her life. And we talk a lot about vulnerability when I work with clients, because so many times we're so afraid to tell other people what's really going on. We're afraid to tell friends and family because we're afraid that we're going to be judged, or we're going to be shamed, or we're going to be talked out of something, or maybe in the past you have, and that has been the outcome. And so what my client did was she was making all these assumptions and creating all these stories in her mind that she convinced herself to be true. And so it kept her very withdrawn. And she and I, during a session, I was inviting her into a stretch and asked her if she was willing to be vulnerable and share with her friends what it was that she was, holding back. And she accepted. She accepted the stretch. And she was so excited and surprised by what happened, so much so that she immediately called me afterwards. And I've never heard so much joy in her voice before. She received empathy and support and encouragement and love back from her friends and family. And she quickly discovered that when she opened up about what her struggles were, about what some of her insecurities were, when she was sharing her truth, she didn't only just build a stronger support system, but she also, it was a step for her to embrace courage, to find courage, to take steps towards making a positive change. And so it became this incredible source of empowerment for her. And it gets to be the same for you. This could happen in any aspect of your life. And when we open ourselves up, like, there's so much magic and beauty on the other side. That vulnerability really does help us build resilience in confronting our fears and our insecurities rather than avoiding them. And so when we're willing to be open and honest about those vulnerabilities, it really is the first step in being able to develop and strengthen your emotional stability and your emotional state. And so it really allows us to acknowledge and process the experiences on a whole other level. And it really ultimately helps us to adapt more to life's adversities. I mean, I'll tell you guys, 7 years ago, when I unexpectedly went through a divorce, first life transition, had to be vulnerable and share with people what was going on. I wanted people to see that I was strong, but I was really falling apart inside. I needed support. I allowed myself to be vulnerable, and the outpouring of love I got back was amazing. The next time that I went through a life transition, I left corporate. I was so afraid that people were going to think that I was crazy. And as soon as I started sharing that I was becoming an entrepreneur and starting my own business, everyone was saying to me, "Oh my God, Wendy, that is amazing. You're going to be so good at that. And I can see you having so much success." Right? Can you feel, more importantly, that deep emotional connection that I created with the people in my life? And it helped me to build a stronger support system so that, honestly, when I went through my next life transition, which was losing my mom to cancer, I immediately thought to myself, gosh, this is such a great opportunity for me to be vulnerable, because I need support. I need more than just my coach and my therapist. I really need my friends. And so ultimately, what it helped me to do, and honestly, it accelerated my healing process, was openly acknowledge what my emotional responses were. It was so much easier to name what the fears were, what the uncertainties were, what I was insecure about during these moments. And rather than masking what was going on, I chose to embrace vulnerability and to become, with every time that I embraced it, it enabled me to be better equipped to confront any new challenges or losses or changes that I encountered. And I did so with courage and authenticity. And so that unfiltered approach really let me process my experience so much more quickly. That's what built my strength and my resilience. And that's what I want to see for each and every one of you guys, is that when we really embrace vulnerability, we become more in touch with our deepest feelings and desires and insecurities. And that ultimately, in my opinion, is the cornerstone of empowerment. And so, I'm sure that you guys have heard myths about vulnerability, such as, I talked about one of them earlier, that vulnerability is a weakness, or perhaps you've heard that vulnerability leads to exploitation or harm, or maybe that you think being vulnerable might be inappropriate if it's in the context of a workplace. But what I know to be true is that when you are vulnerable in a way that has, or when it's done with intention, okay, when it's done with intention and purpose, it leads to deeper connections and understanding, effective leadership, even collaboration. And so I invite you to debunk those myths within your own life and overcome that fear of being vulnerable. And the way that you can do that is just start small, take baby steps towards vulnerability. Maybe it's sharing thoughts or emotions with someone that you do trust and that you feel comfortable with, and start gradually opening up and see what happens. That is what's going to help reduce the fear associated with it. Another strategy is, recognize the benefits. I've talked about many of them today. Remind yourself of the positive outcomes that vulnerability can bring: resilience, deeper connections, personal growth, transformation. Understanding that it leads to those benefits is what's going to keep you motivated. And then finally, one of my favorites in terms of overcoming the fear of being vulnerable is practicing self-compassion and grace, being kind to yourself like you would your best friend, and recognizing that vulnerability is a natural human experience. And so we don't talk to or treat ourselves the way that we would our best friend. And ultimately, that's what I'm asking you to open the door to. That's what I'm asking you to step inside of. And so as you incorporate vulnerability into your life, which I hope this episode is inspiring you to do, you're really going to initiate the most open and honest conversations with people in your life. It will also teach you those people that you know that you can count on. I said, a couple of years ago, I'm like, God, divorce was amazing because it really enabled me to clean house. Like it enabled me to see who my real true friends were. And it was those people that I could share my deepest thoughts and feelings and experiences with. And so the more that I opened up, it enabled me to get deeper in those conversations with those people. And I'd rather have the small number of friends that I have today than to have a million friends at my fingertips, because to me, it's really about quality, not quantity. And so I hope that today's episode really shined the light on the endless possibilities that are on the other side of vulnerability, and that you can see that when vulnerability is stripped of its disguises, it really is the key to unlocking just the most amazing possibilities in your life and being able to navigate it no matter what. And really, in the moments where we can pause, that's typically when our emotions and feelings flood to the surface, and when we really have the opportunity to go inward, to then be able to go outward and to seek that connection and that support by being vulnerable with somebody in your life. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope that you found today's episode empowering and informational. You know that I'm always striving to provide you guys with nuggets of information to support you wherever it is that you are in your life transition process, and to encourage you to also see the power in the pause that life gifts to us. So thank you guys for tuning in. In case you haven't gone into the show notes, I want you guys to know that I have an amazing brand new website, Wendy Paige, Paige, sterling.com. You guys can find also these podcast episodes. You can also learn about many of the brand new programs that I have. And I created what I think is an amazing mini course, or as I'm calling it, a micro course all around pivoting your path. And you can get that on the homepage of my brand new website. So be sure to go there and input your information so that you can receive that free mini course. You can do it at your own pace. It's short. I know you're busy. And then don't forget to also follow me on my brand new Instagram account, which is same Wendy Paige Sterling, same thing on Facebook. I really would love to connect with you guys to just really get to know you. I love hearing suggestions for even future podcast episodes, or if you're somebody who is really seeking support or you don't know what kind of support you need, you know that I always offer that to you guys. So again, you can find all of that information on my website, wendypagesterling.com. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Sending you all so much love, light, and joy as always. Mwah. Bye, everybody.